62 days. That's how long a 21-mile stretch of water has been holding the entire global economy hostage. And somehow it's already vanishing from your feed. This is not a regional conflict anymore. This is an energy crisis that will reach your gas pump, your grocery bill, and your electricity payment whether you're in Texas, Toronto, or London. Stay with me, because what happened in the last 48 hours changes everything you thought you knew about this war. February 28, 2026. While most people were going about their normal Tuesday, the United States and Israel launched one of the most consequential military operations in modern history, simultaneous airstrikes on Iran that included the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Within hours, Iran did something no country had ever successfully done before at this scale. It shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Not symbolically, not partially, functionally, almost completely. Think about what that actually means. Before that Tuesday, approximately 25% of all seaborne oil traded on this planet passed through that narrow, 21-mile-wide choke point every single day. 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, massive volumes of fertilizer feeding global food supplies, all of it flowing through a strip of water you could drive across in 20 minutes. Gone. Overnight. Tanker traffic that averaged 129 ships per day in February dropped to near zero. Shipping giants like Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, companies that have sailed through wars, through pandemics, through everything, looked at the risk assessment and said, "Our ships are not going through there." And that is the story that broke. That's what dominated headlines for about 2 weeks. Big, dramatic, unmissable. Then something happened. The coverage faded. Editors moved on. The algorithm chased the next crisis. But the crisis itself, it didn't move on. It got worse. Quietly, methodically, and in ways that are far more alarming than the original explosion of coverage suggested. Before going further, if you found this on your feed and you're not subscribed to Verified Bulletin yet, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to track exactly the stories that mainstream coverage drops mid-sentence. You'll want to be here for what's coming next on this one. Here's why this story faded from your timeline, even as it kept escalating. April 8th, a ceasefire was announced. Breathless headlines everywhere. War paused. Hormuz deal reached. People exhaled, moved on. But read the fine print of that ceasefire, and this is where it gets fascinating. Iran didn't reopen Hormuz. Not really. What Iran did was create its own shipping lane, a controlled corridor running north of Larak Island along its own coastline. And to use it, ships paid tolls. Over $1 million per vessel. Some paid $2 million. One ship, $2 million. To pass through international waters, Iran essentially monetized its blockade, turned a military weapon into a revenue stream, and Western media largely missed this pivot because everyone was celebrating a ceasefire. Meanwhile, on April 13th, 5 days after that ceasefire, the United States hit back with its own blockade, a naval blockade of all Iranian ports. The U.S. military declared that any vessel entering or departing Iranian coastal areas was subject to interception, capture, and diversion. Over 10,000 U.S. personnel, more than a dozen warships, dozens of aircraft, all deployed in the first 24 hours alone. So now you had a dual blockade, Iran strangling the Persian Gulf from inside, America strangling Iran's entire coastline from outside. Two of the most consequential naval operations on the planet happening simultaneously. And most people's timelines? Moving on to the next thing. By May 1st, the U.S. Department of Defense estimated Iran had lost $4.8 billion in oil revenue. President Trump was claiming the blockade was costing Iran $500 million every single day. But here's the part nobody was asking loudly enough. If Iran's economy was being crushed, why wasn't Iran backing down? This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. While the ceasefire storyline dominated the news cycle, Iran was rebuilding its leverage, not militarily, but strategically. And on May 5, 2026, they revealed exactly how far that strategy had advanced. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps published a new map, two bold red lines stretching across the Strait of Hormuz, claiming expanded Iranian military control over large sections of the United Arab Emirates' own coastline. The western line runs from Iran's Keshem Island all the way to the UAE Emirate of Al-Quwain. The eastern line connects Iran's Mount Mubarak to Fujairah on the UAE's coast. Read that again. Iran drew military control lines over UAE territory, published it officially, distributed it on state media. That is not the behavior of a country that is losing. And simultaneously, on the exact same day that map was published, Iran launched what analysts are describing as a coordinated strike package against the UAE itself. 15 missiles and 4 drones. UAE air defenses intercepted most of them, but one drone got through and it hit a major energy hub in Fujairah. A fire broke out. 3 people were wounded. This was the Fujairah oil refinery, a facility that exports over 1.7 million barrels per day, roughly 1.7% of all daily world demand. That's not a warning shot, that's a demonstration. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf posted publicly on Tuesday, "The continuation of the current situation is unbearable for the United States, while we have not even begun yet." We have not even begun yet. Now, on top of that, Iran launched an entirely new bureaucratic infrastructure for the strait, something called the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, the PGSA. Ships wanting to transit Hormuz now receive official emails from this authority with new rules and regulations. Transit permits are required. It's described by Iranian state media as a sovereign governance system. Iran isn't just blocking Hormuz, Iran is governing Hormuz, as if it's theirs. Mohammad Reza Farzanagan, professor of economics of the Middle East at Marburg University, described Iran's grip on the strait as a, and this phrase is important, strategic equalizer. His analysis cuts right to the core of why this situation is so hard to resolve. Iran cannot match U.S. naval and air power symmetrically, but it has geography on its side. Hormuz is narrow, congested, and economically vital. In such a space, Iran does not need large-scale confrontation to impose costs. Mines, missiles, drones, fast boats, electronic disruption, the threat of selective targeting. Iran doesn't need to defeat the U.S. Navy to win this standoff. It only needs to make insurers and shippers understand that sending a tanker through that water carries catastrophic financial risk. And right now, that's exactly what insurers and shippers believe. Hapag-Lloyd, one of the world's largest shipping companies, released a statement on May 5th saying point blank, transits through the Strait of Hormuz are, for the moment, not possible for their ships. So while Trump was announcing Project Freedom, escorting U.S.-flagged vessels through with Navy destroyers, only 2 merchant ships have successfully made the crossing. 2, with hundreds more sitting bottled up in the Persian Gulf waiting. This is exactly why Verified Bulletin exists. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. What do you think breaks this standoff first? Iran's economy collapsing, or global oil prices forcing a diplomatic deal? I read every single comment. Here's what none of the big outlets have connected for you clearly enough. S&P Global Energy put out a warning this week that even after the Strait of Hormuz eventually reopens, even after all of this is somehow resolved, it will take a minimum of 7 additional months to fully restore upstream production. 7 months. And that is their optimistic estimate. Their actual warning? The longer the strait remains closed, the more likely the supply crisis extends into late 2026 and into 2027. This isn't a short-term shock that fades in a news cycle. This is a structural disruption baking itself into global energy markets, global food supply chains, because fertilizer ships through Hormuz too, and global inflation trajectories. Think about the cascade. Oil prices rise because supply is constrained. Shipping costs rise because routes are disrupted and insurance premiums are astronomical. Food prices rise because fertilizer costs more and transport costs more. Central banks tighten. Mortgage rates stay elevated. Recession risk climbs. And all of that chain reaction traces back to one 21-mile stretch of water and a war that started 66 days ago and disappeared from your timeline. Over the course of this conflict, analysts say at least 6,413 missiles and drones have been launched at 7 Arab countries in the region. The Gulf states that were supposed to be stable U.S. allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, are now caught in a situation that Doha Institute professor Muhannad Saloom describes bluntly. Iran is telling GCC countries that if the U.S. attacks Iran, they will destroy their infrastructure and cause an economic crash. How long do the Gulf states maintain what Saloom calls strategic patience? How long before one of them sees this as an existential threat and responds in a way that spirals this conflict beyond anything currently playing out? That's the open question nobody has a clean answer to. And here's the additional layer that makes this genuinely unprecedented. Iran just lost, according to U.S. estimates, nearly $5 billion in oil revenue in 6 weeks. Its economy is under severe strain. Internet shutdowns inside Iran, prices surging, jobs disappearing. Millions of ordinary Iranians bearing the cost of this confrontation daily. But Iran's government is still publishing maps claiming UAE territory, still firing on a refinery that exports 1.7% of world oil demand, still building the Persian Gulf Strait Authority as if it intends to govern this waterway permanently. A country under that kind of economic pressure, choosing escalation over retreat, that tells you something. It tells you that Iran's calculation is that giving up Hormuz means giving up everything. It's their negotiating leverage, their deterrence, their proof of relevance in the region. Professor Farzanagan put it directly. Hormuz is probably Iran's key leverage point at this stage. It gives Iran bargaining power precisely because using it fully would damage everyone. Everyone. That includes you, sitting wherever you are watching this. So let's bring this home. This story broke back in February with the kind of shock and awe coverage you'd expect. Then a ceasefire gave everyone permission to look away. What developed in the silence was a dual naval blockade, an Iranian toll system, a new governing authority, a new map claiming UAE waters, missile strikes on Fujairah, and an energy warning that says this crisis could still be damaging your wallet in 2027. This is not a story that ended. This is a story that transformed into something more complex, more entrenched, and more consequential than the original headlines suggested. And you deserve to know that. At Verified Bulletin, authentic and verified reporting is all this channel does. No exaggeration, no sensationalism, just the verified facts that matter and the context that actually explains them. If this video gave you something real, hit the like button. It costs you nothing, and it tells YouTube this kind of journalism is worth pushing to more people. Subscribe if you haven't, because this Hormuz situation is not over. Updates are coming, and you'll want to be here when they do. And drop a comment right now. Do you think the US or Iran blinks first in this standoff? I want to see where the Verified Bulletin community stands on this. This is Verified Bulletin. Stay verified.